The month of September may be where the nice story starts. But when it comes to being a champion, whether it be at the conference, at the national level, or even just being better than the old rival downtown, those types of stories, they start right here, right now, starting in this month of October when the leaves start turning brown and we start to get that authentic fall leather. Welcome back to the Any Given Saturday podcast, where anything can happen on any given Saturday in this beautiful game that is college football. The game between Georgia Tech and Miami last week is a perfect example of that. Last time that we were on here, we were kind of just giving a recap to a few of the games that actually surprised me the most. And now we go ahead and jump right into many top 25 matchups that are happening this upcoming weekend. Matter of fact, we actually have 4 top 25 games happening over the course of this weekend. So I'm very excited to go ahead and preview those particular games and also kind of go out and give my best bets for this upcoming week in terms of what games that you should be betting on this upcoming weekend, right? So hope you guys are excited for about that and so much more. If you are, make sure you go ahead, smack that like button for me, because hitting that like button does let me know that we are enjoying the content over here, obviously, and it helps get this out to more people out there in the YouTube community, gets it out to more college football fans like yourselves. And speaking of that college football community, you guys have a real chance to be an OG here on the channel. You see how big our channel is right now? I think we're better than what that subscriber count is right now. And you could help contribute to making sure that we're no longer considered underrated by going ahead, hitting that subscribe button, hitting that as well as that like button. As I said earlier, it only takes a few seconds and it would help me out tremendously. I would truly appreciate that from the very bottom of my heart. But yeah, we have 4 top 25 games this upcoming weekend, and we're going to start getting some answers here in terms of those conference championship races, as well as how good is USC? How good is some of these other teams around the country as well? So I don't think I need to waste any more breath kind of building up into this. We have 4 top 25 games this week. I'm pretty sure I've said that already. Most of them happening, actually all of them are happening at 3:30 or later. So you do absolutely love to see that. And speaking of that 3:30, I mean, let's not waste any more time. 3:30 kickoff on ABC. We got to start with a big time matchup that's happening in the Pac-12 this upcoming weekend. Just a couple of days from when I'm recording this video. I am recording this podcast on the 12th of October. So that being said, we got number 8 Oregon, 5-0, 2-0 in conference play. They're going on the road. They're going up to Seattle, Washington, going up to Husky Stadium. They will be taking on the number 7 ranked team in the nation, the Washington Huskies. And oh boy, I am excited about this one. Both teams just have absolutely brilliant offenses. Oregon, for example, their season low, 38 points. That's early in the season when they went on the road to take on Texas Tech. Washington, meanwhile, they just had their lowest score of the week, 31 against Arizona. But one thing's for sure, these two teams, they certainly know how to put points up on the scoreboard. So I'm really excited about this game in particular. I will have all eyeballs on this particular game. Cannot wait for that to go ahead and kick off for us at the 3:30 time slots. And this is a little bit different too. So these two teams have actually played against each other 114 times previously, but this 115th meeting is going to arguably be the biggest meeting in the history of this particular matchup. Not only is this going to be the last iteration of this in the Pac-12, as both teams will be going over to the Big Ten following the conclusion of this football season. My thoughts on that both these teams going to the Big Ten have been well documented to this point, so I'm not going to dive too deep into that. This is the first time, actually, that these two teams are ranked in the top 10 at the same time when they meet up at Husky Stadium. So, big game. Absolutely big game. We got passionate fan bases on both sides for those that pay a little bit more attention to football on the West Coast. And it's going to be really important. This is a must win for those that want to go and compete for a conference championship. Pac-12 standings. I'm not sure I'm going to have them up when we have the podcast out, but here's a current look at what the Pac-12 standings are going to be looking like. USC on top right now. They have a 4-0 conference record. Oregon and Washington are tied with a 2-0 record. So whoever does manage to win this game, whoever wins this game will have an inside track to make it to that Pac-12 championship. And the reason why I talk about that specifically is you could see on the screen right now, I actually did decide that we're going to go ahead and include this. You can tell there is no divisions in the Pac-12. So it's the two best teams regardless of division. And that's how it is, how it's going to go. That is how it is going to go. USC already puts themselves on the inside track with that 4-0 conference record, like I said. So winning this game is going to really help making sure that they are going to get themselves that Pac-12 championship when it's time to do that. This Oregon team will be they'll certainly be looking for some revenge right now. Last year when these two teams got together, lots of points scored in this game. And what ended up happening last year, Oregon actually did have the lead. That was something that we did actually see happen. However, Washington was able to rally back late in the game, and they won 37-34 over what at the time was the number 6 ranked team in the nation in that Oregon Ducks team. So Oregon going on the road, like we said, they are going to take this Washington team on. College conference implications, college football playoff implications. I feel safe to talk about that now that we are in the month of October, and just looking for some payback at the end of the day. That's really what it's going to come down to. And really, speaking of that, how is this game going to be won? Either for Oregon or either on Washington. Key here is the defenses. We know what's going to happen in these games. Oregon has a very good offense. Washington has a very good offense. Both of these teams are going to score. Both of these teams are going to put up a bunch of yards. It's going to be borderline video game numbers in this game. That's just how it's going to go. That's how the cookie is going to crumble, so to speak. That being said, though, when you get these teams in the red zone, can you force these teams to get field goals instead of touchdowns? Because I look at the Red River rivalry that happened this past weekend. Part of the reason why Oklahoma was able to beat Texas was because Oklahoma was more able to get Texas to settle for field goals or turn the ball over in the red zone versus Texas getting touchdowns. Texas had to work a tad bit harder. And then, of course, they got big plays from Dillon Gabriel on that final drive to put Oklahoma over the top. So that's a big key. Big key is, can these defense get the critical stops? Force field goals versus forcing touchdowns, right? That's the big one. Whoever can make more of those critical stops in this game, I think it's going to end up winning this game. So from that, I kind of lean towards this Oregon squad more so than what we saw from this Washington team. So I think the Washington defense, I do say this, Washington, I do believe, is better defensively than they were last season. I think they made some strides defensively. However, I think Oregon is a better defensive team overall than what Washington is. Because take away that Texas Tech game where they gave up 30 points on the road. Because keep in mind, Texas Tech was coming off a loss to Wyoming, and they were in wounded animal mode. This is the points that Oregon has allowed since just taking out that Texas Tech game. 7 points, 10 points to Hawaii, 6 to Colorado, and then the last game that they played, the Stanford matchup on the road, 6 points. So this is a very good defensive team. And because it's a little bit better of a defensive team overall than what Washington may be, Washington, of course, has not looked as stellar defensively in its last couple of matchups as they've started Pac-12 conference play, taking on Cal and Arizona on the road. I do give the initial advantage to the Oregon Ducks in this regard. Even though they are going to be on the road, one thing that I always think travels, regardless of whether you're a home team or a road team, I think defense always travels. And I think that could certainly be the case there. They're certainly going to need it. Another big matchup to watch out for, and I mean, I think everyone was seeing this coming from 1,000 miles away. Who's going to outduel the other? Big implications in terms of being in that hunt for the Heisman Trophy as well. You got Michael Penix Jr., the quarterback for the Washington Huskies, playing at a high level, 16 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, basically 2,000 yards at this point. He has a higher completion percentage than last year. He's completed 75% of his passes. And yeah, he's just playing at an extraordinarily high level right now. He's just doing a great job just guiding this Washington offense. And he has honestly played himself to being that first-round pick in the NFL draft because of how stellar that he has played at this point in the season, and hasn't even done so, haven't had to rely on the legs. Remember, this Michael Penix Jr., you want to go back to his days in Indiana when he had Indiana relevant back in the COVID season. He was using his legs a little bit more, became better as a passer overall since his days in Indiana, but I think he still has a dynamic running ability. That's going to be a big thing to watch. Can Dan Lanning figure out ways to confuse Michael Penix Jr., keep him contained in the pocket, because when he rolls out of the pocket, he can make some big plays in that regard too. Bo Nix, while not as flashy stats as what we have seen from Michael Penix Jr. so far, also having an excellent season too. 1,500 yards, 15 touchdowns, taking real good care of the football. I'm talking about real good care of this football. He only thrown 1 interception the entire year. He did that 2 games ago against Colorado. Still blew out Colorado. I want to keep that in mind, right? So who's going to outduel the other? And which defensive coordinator is going to do a little bit better of a job of taking care of keeping the opposing quarterback contained? That's going to be a really interesting matchup. I think whoever is also going to put up more numbers from their quarterback. We see a quarterback-driven league at the NFL. College football is starting to go in that direction, if it hasn't already. I mean, we've almost always seen quarterbacks win the Heisman in the last decade plus. So that's something to also keep an eye on. And I think that's a push between both of those two teams because, I mean, Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr., I think they're certainly on the same level as of right now, or at least very similar. Now, good news for Michael Penix Jr. He is expected to have his full complement of offensive weapons available for him. And this is the first time that this has happened since the week 3 matchup against Michigan State. Wide receiver Jalen McMillan, very good wide receiver for the Washington Huskies. He is coming back. He had that injury against the Spartans, and he missed the last couple of games. He did miss that Colorado game. He did also miss the matchup that they had against Arizona. And it'll be a welcome addition. In the 2 full games that he played, the Boise State and Tulsa game, nearly 100 yards per game, 3 touchdowns too. Almost had 100 yards in a game against Michigan State that he didn't even fully play in because, well, he got injured in the game. He was on pace to have such a big day. And it didn't work out like that, but he's coming back, and that's even including like Rome Odunze and Jalen Polk. Some would say arguably west of the Mississippi River, best wide receiver trio in the country, at least west of the Mississippi River. If you want to count the entire country, it's absolutely top 5. But this Ducks defense could be capable of shutting it down. They have the 2nd best total defense, and they have the best pass defense in the Pac-12. another key one to look after. The Washington passing attack versus specifically Oregon's passing defense. If Oregon can hold up in the secondary, then it's going to be Bargo Chicken for Washington. The Ducks are only allowing 150 yards per game through the air, less than 5 yards per attempt. So this is a very strong Oregon defense, even though that offense may get most of the attention. One X factor that I do want to point out, and then I'll kind of dive into who I personally think is going to win this game and how I think it's going to go down. So, sorry, I'm looking for my notes real quick. So is this a week where Bucky Irving breaks out? He's the running back for Oregon. He hasn't had to carry the ball very much. 50 carries, 400 yards, 4 touchdowns. He does average 8 yards a carry. So this is a guy that has not had many opportunities to carry the football. They do like to air it out with Bo Nix and that Oregon receiving core a little bit more. But when he does carry the football, he is very effective. He does a very good job of making the most out of his touches. I think about if this is going to be a Bucky Irving breakout game, because we know this Washington team can score. So I wonder if Dan Lanning is going to want to do everything possible to maybe lean on that running game, not overly rely on the running game, so to speak. You got Bo Nix, you don't need to rely on the running game, but I think it would make sense for maybe Coach Lanning to lean on Bucky Irving, lean on that Oregon offensive line. Because last year, he had 149 yards rushing against his Washington team. Didn't lead to a win, like we said earlier, but something to keep an eye out on as well. So that they can also own that time of possession. That's another thing, too. If you keep the ball away from Washington, I think that's going to make a lot of sense, and it's going to give you a chance to win this game. So I talked about all of that. We got Oregon. We got Washington. We'll take a look at the line now. We'll take a look at what the Any Given Saturday model says. So the model as of 4 o'clock Eastern on Thursday, October 12th, the line is sitting at 2.5. That's what the line is currently sitting at right now. Any Given Saturday, that power rating model that we did earlier this week, it likes Washington a little bit more than what Vegas does. It has Washington at 7.5. And you know what I'm going to do? I think everything that I just talked about, everything that I just said, I'm going to disagree with the model here. I think aside from Washington having home field advantage, and don't get me wrong, Husky Stadium is going to have significant home field advantage. It's going to be a rocking stadium come Saturday afternoon, even though it will be a noon kickoff for those of you that are on the West Coast. A lot of things I just talked about seem to lean towards Oregon's way. And because I think Oregon is just a little bit more sound defensively, because I think their defense does match up a little bit better against Washington, who likes to throw it through the air. Ducks are number 1 in the Pac-12 in pass defense. I'm going to pick Oregon to win this game. And this is at detriment to my own preseason predictions. I did pick Washington to win this game. Or not to win this game, but to win the Pac-12 ultimately. But I think with how Oregon has made that step forward since the time that they were crushed by Georgia early in the 2022 season, I think that Oregon is going to come out on top, and I think we're going to have a lot of interesting games coming in the Pac-12 in the second half of the season. I'm really excited for what the Pac-12 has in store for us in its not redemption tour, farewell tour. Wow, we were having a hard time finding words. In the farewell tour for the Pac-12, I think we're going to have a really exciting conference race in this part of the country. It's a shame that it's breaking up. I will pick Oregon to win, and I will certainly, needless to say, will pick Oregon plus the points in that plus 2.5. Whoo, man, we're going to have some fun action here. We still have more top 25 games to preview coming up. And I think it's a good time. Speaking of when we were talking about what we have going on, let's go ahead and jump into the next top 25 game that we got on store. And that's Miami. This is also going to be on ABC. So right after the Washington and Oregon game does end up concluding, we will have the next top 25 game that's going to happen. Miami, still ranked in the top 25. They're ranked number 25 in the country. Just a preposterous loss against Georgia Tech. A loss that really should not have happened by any means. Well, now they got to go on the road, and they are going to go and take on North Carolina. North Carolina, still undefeated, ranked number 12 in the entire country, led by Drake May. And I wonder if Miami losing to Georgia Tech the way that they did, I wonder it's going to get them more focused, because you think about what happened. We'll go to Miami first, obviously. So you think about what happened to that Miami team. Miami should have won that game. They were a 20-point favorite over Georgia Tech, and it should have been, it would have been an ugly win. They would have not covered regardless, but it should have been an ugly win. And Mauro Cristobal knows that. He's taken the blame since then for not calling the kneel down. He's just he's going to take a blame. He's going to take responsibility and accountability for that. But now you have a Miami team that's going to be refocused, and they're also going to be in that wounded animal mode. Because now, instead of Miami being undefeated going in this game, and maybe this being a top 15 matchup, it's going to be a top 25 matchup instead. Still a ranked matchup. That's why we're still talking about it. In North Carolina ranked number 12 in the country. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting just from that standpoint. How is this team going to be focused? Because Tar Heels are going to have a much different mindset. They're coming off a blowout against Syracuse. It extends the program's best start in 26 seasons. This 5-0 start that they're experiencing right now, the last time that North Carolina started as well, I was barely alive. I'm 26. Will turn 27 in March. When I was born was the last time that North Carolina football has started this well. And the offense for North Carolina has been elite. They end up racking up 650 total yards. They also only surrendered just 11 first downs. That's a fewest in a game for the Tar Heels defense since 2012, over a decade. And not only that, North Carolina has also had Miami's number as of late. So since Mack Brown, the head coach of North Carolina, has came out of retirement and started coaching this North Carolina football team, Tar Heels have won all 4 of their meetings against Miami in Chapel Hill. 3 of those wins did come in pretty narrow, thin margins, just 3-point games. And that includes the in 2019 with Brown's first home game as a head coach of the North Carolina Tar Heels. Miami, by the way, they were off to its best start since going 10-0 in 2017, prior to the Georgia Tech game. So what should we watch out for in this particular game? Quarterbacks, definitely got to talk about the quarterbacks. I think we're going to have a good quarterback matchup in here as well. Drake May taking on Tyler Van Dyke. Tyler Van Dyke struggled immensely in its matchup against the Georgia Tech defense. Miami did only score 20 in that game, but even with that rough patch, This is a guy that is in the top 10 in terms of all FBS quarterbacks with a efficiency ranking of 178.8. Don't know how that efficiency ranking is necessarily calculated, but that is tops in the ACC. Drake May, not as efficient. He's outside of the top 25. Van Dyke, on the other hand, and Drake May, they have similar completion percentages, both in the top 15, throwing at 72.6 and 72.1. So these are good quarterbacks. Van Dyke did not show that in the Georgia Tech game, but this is a guy that does do a good job of quarterbacking for the Miami offense overall. But we know that Drake May is also on a different level. Drake May is also third in the entire country in total offense at over 350 yards a game. That's what he's accounting for by himself between passing the ball and running the ball. He's in the top 5 on his own. He's certifying him. We already talked about him being at least quarterback 2, maybe not necessarily quarterback 1, but he's certainly quarterback 2 for the upcoming NFL draft if he does choose to declare, because he might be making more money through NIL than maybe what he would make on a rookie NFL contract, for example. Now, key thing to watch here, defense. We talked about defense in the previous one. Got to talk about defense here, notably Miami's defense. Even with how ugly that game was, the Hurricanes still are going to provide a tough test for North Carolina and that high-powered offense that the Tar Heels are going to provide. The Hurricanes do still rank top 10 in the FBS. They're only allowing 268 yards a game, and they're in the top 15 in points per game allowed, 14.6. So they're only allowing a couple of touchdowns, and that's going to be a fun test. Like I said, for that North Carolina offense, averaging 500 yards a game, to go with 36.6 points, that's both in the top 20 for both yards per game and points per game. Third downs are going to be real important as well. Can the Tar Heels continue to convert third downs at a high rate? They're second in the country right now, converting over 56% of their third down conversions. They're extending drives. And that's going to likewise test the Miami defense and test their resolve, because let's say we have a game like last time where maybe the offense is not clicking on all cylinders like it was in the previous game for the Hurricanes. Can they keep a level head and make sure that they're getting them off the field? Because if North Carolina is able to extend drives, it could be a long day. Plus, North Carolina does have its full complement of weapons as well. The Tar Heels do have Tez Walker back. He initially applied for NCAA eligibility after his transfer from Kent State. He technically transferred twice, and that's why I got it denied. So he was on North Carolina Central. North Carolina Central canceled their season. He then went to Kent State. So he didn't play any football in North Carolina Central. He went to Kent State, played some time at Kent State. His head coach left to be the offensive coordinator of Colorado. He now goes to North Carolina. It's dumb that the NCAA denied his eligibility in the first place, but Tez Walker, he's back on the field. And Tez Walker did get some looks, 6 catches, 43 yards. I'm curious to see how Tez Walker gets more involved in this particular game, because I think they're going to need him in order to win this game comfortably if they wanted to do that. Now, he has been working with the scout team, but working with the scout team and working with the first team guys, completely different story. So watching for how North Carolina handles the defense of Miami. I'm looking at, does Van Dyke just have a bounce back game here? And then Tez Walker and possible X factor. But all that said, we'll take a look at the model here. We got a -3.5 for North Carolina right now. I got the model with as 13-point favorites. This time, I think I will end up agreeing with the model in this aspect, because I think I question Miami's coaching staff. After what happened in that previous matchup, I believe in the talent of Miami. I don't believe in the coaching staff. It's not just on Mario Cristobal. It barrels down to the coordinators and the positional coaches as well. That was a meltdown of all meltdowns that should have never happened. Will it be a blowout? No, I don't believe that this will be a blowout, but I do think North Carolina wins. I think North Carolina wins comfortably, and I think North Carolina does end up winning by that 10 to 14 range that the power rating model that we have here on the channel is going to side with. But at the same time that we have the Miami and North Carolina game, we also have another top 25 game that's going to be happening at the exact same time. This game is going to be on NBC, and I just talked about NBC, so you already know what it's going to be. Notre Dame, number 21 ranked Notre Dame, they will be taking on the undefeated USC Trojans, who even though they're undefeated, they have been sliding. They have fallen down to number 10 in the entire country. And this USC team, we're going to really figure out what this team actually is made of, right? Because the last few weeks, yes, USC has won, but they have not been convincing, though. They beat Arizona State by 2 touchdowns, and then they barely beat Colorado. They barely beat Arizona. That was in triple overtime, by the way, a game that we actually stayed up and watched when we couldn't fall asleep. But Notre Dame, on the other hand, they got their second loss in against Louisville. So for all intents and purposes, Notre Dame, unless there's a ton of chaos, there is a very slim chance that Notre Dame is going to go to the college football playoff at this point. So, okay. So we got that out of the way. What is this Notre Dame team? What is their mindset, right? Because Notre Dame, the last 3 weeks for Notre Dame has been brutal. They've taken on a ranked Ohio State team, lost on the very last play. They played a ranked Duke team and were in a slugfest till the end, had to pull away at the very end. They did win that game, though. And then we saw them on the road a second time against another ranked opponent. They lose that game, and they're taking on their 4th ranked opponent once more. This Notre Dame schedule is brutal in this part of the season right here. Don't tell me that Notre Dame does not have a difficult schedule, because they got it. They certainly have it. Now, this is a rivalry game. This is actually a historic rivalry game. This has like 100 plus like meetings. So they've been getting at it for a long time now. Last time that these two teams got together, Notre Dame did lose this game, 38-27. This was, however, at USC. We're now going to South Bend for this particular game. So at least if you're Notre Dame, you're not feeling great about how you already have your second loss. And when I was looking at Notre Dame's schedule, I did not pen that Louisville game as a loss. I thought they would win that game, but Notre Dame didn't win that one. Okay. So USC, what's USC made of? So this USC team, we know what they have in Caleb Williams. He's the best quarterback in the country if he goes to the NFL. And that's an if because of NIL nowadays. He'll be the number 1 overall pick. I think we all agree with that. But how's the rest of the supporting cast holding up? Because this is the toughest game that USC is going to play. And you look at their schedule, they're not necessarily battle-tested. And matter of fact, the only team that they have played on their schedule, USC has, that currently has a winning record is Colorado, who sits at 4-2. And I don't think anyone coming into this season was expecting them to be ranked in the top 25. I know we saw Colorado ranked at some point, but recalibration of expectations after that TCU game led to that. We know what Caleb Williams is. 72% passer, 1,800 yards passing, has 22 touchdown passes and has only thrown one singular interception. He does also have 6 rushing touchdowns as well. This is good as advertised. He's him. So I think we can agree Caleb Williams, he's going to get his. I don't think there's any question about that. USC is going to score. At least I would think. It doesn't matter how good your defense is. USC is going to score points in this game, and they're going to score plenty of points. The question in terms of how this game is going to go is, can Notre Dame match and get enough critical stops? They have a better quarterback than what they did last year. Sam Hartman has to keep them in this fight. He has to keep them in this game, because if not, if it's a slow start, that's going to be a problem. And in the last few games, he's been fine, but he hasn't been great, so to speak, right? Particularly in that Louisville game. Worst game of the season for Sam Hartman. He threw 3 interceptions. 2 times in a row, by the way, that he threw 3 interceptions or more against Louisville. Did it last season, or it was either last season or in 2021 when Wake Forest played Louisville. So, and on top of that, their offensive line has not played at the level that it has. It allowed 5 sacks in that game. It allowed 24 total pressures. I mean, Sam Hartman's got to have time. He's not that mobile of a quarterback. And while USC has been exposed on the back end, they have been able to get sacks. The USC defense has 22 sacks this year. So Sam Hartman, he's going to have to find a way to keep it up against USC. Notre Dame has to find a way to score 30 plus. If Notre Dame doesn't score 30 plus, I don't see a scenario personally where they end up winning this game. This is not going to be a defensive struggle, or at least I don't think. Now, what's working in favor of Notre Dame? 2 things, okay? 1, defense has been performing very poorly. One of the worst defenses, I think, in the country, at least from a yards per game standpoint. They have surrendered over 420 yards a game, 421 to be exact. That's good for a 112th in the entire FBS. They've given up 260 yards through the air. They have a 15-4 touchdown to interception ratio. You got somebody throwing for 260 yards a game, 15 touchdowns and 4 interceptions in a season. You know, you're going to a bowl game with that quarterback, or so to speak. The defense has also given up 41 points in back-to-back games. That includes that triple overtime victory against Arizona. So the USC defense is certainly vulnerable. I think no one is disputing that. If the pass rush isn't getting to Sam Hartman, and I think that offensive line does have a bounce back game. I think that could be a source of contention for USC. And then the other thing that is working for Notre Dame, not just that they're going to be at home, but weather sometimes play a factor. Sometimes it's considered a great equalizer. And South Bend, there's not supposed to be ideal conditions on Saturday night. It's expected to hover around 45 degrees, 50% chance of rain, and wind up to 20 miles an hour. So, weather conditions that aren't necessarily conducive or ideal for passing the ball. And what does USC do? They pass the ball because they have the best quarterback in the country. Notre Dame's got a good quarterback themselves in Sam Hartman, but they can also run the ball. They have the best running back room in the entire country, led by their tailback, that tailback being Audric Estime, who has almost 700 yards rushing at this point of the year. That could play in Notre Dame's favor. So that being said, let's bounce it back for a minute. What's the model say? What does the line say as of right now? So line currently has Notre Dame at 2.5 points. And then we also got the power rating model liking Notre Dame at that -8. I'm going to agree with the model here yet again, because I think what it boils down to for me is, and you saw it in the power ratings that I released earlier this week, I'm not a firm believer in USC. I think if Caleb Williams went down with an injury, this is an average team at best for Power 5 standards. I think Notre Dame exposes that. They're able to get just enough stops because they are pretty defensively sound for the most part. The only time that they allowed 30 plus points was to that Louisville team. That's just because they've been mentally exhausted. I think we see them get right here now that we've seen them lose yet again. And so Notre Dame defense gets just enough stops, and then USC able to have a balanced attack with Sam Hartman through the air, despite the tough weather conditions. And Estime is going to tear it up on the ground. Got one of the best offensive lines in the country to run behind. I'm going to take Notre Dame, and I'm going to take Notre Dame plus, with the points. So we'll have them covering, and we'll have them winning this game straight up too. And that just leaves us with one more top 25 game that we have not yet talked about here tonight. This game is going to be happening on Fox. It's at 8 o'clock. It's going to be out in Corvallis, Oregon. Drove by Corvallis, Oregon over the summer. It's a nice town. Shout out to those of you in the Oregon State community. Big time, well, not as big time, I would say, as Washington and Oregon. That's going to get a lot of attention within the conference. But then you also have Oregon State and UCLA. Both teams with one loss. Both teams are fighting for that opportunity to maybe be that dark horse to go to the college football playoff. This is basically an elimination game from that standpoint. Both teams also have one loss in conference play as well. That's where both their losses come from. And because it's best two teams, it's not split up by division, this is also going to be an elimination game from the conference standpoint as well. So we got that going on this Saturday night. Now, it is in Corvallis, Oregon, like I said. This is actually the first time since 2019 that these two teams have met. And this is the first time since 2015 that they're meeting specifically in Corvallis. The previous meeting happened in LA on UCLA's campus. Oregon State, in their own right, has played a tough schedule so far. They're coming off of, this is going to be their third ranked opponent that Oregon State has played in the last 4 weeks. They went on the road a few weeks ago against Washington State. They found a way to win at home against Utah. They do have that game against Cal, and that Cal game was a shootout. Now they're playing against UCLA, and then they'll have a little bit calmer of a schedule before they close out against Washington and Oregon. So we got that going for them. UCLA, on the other hand, UCLA also is going through a tough part of their schedule. We saw them against Washington State. They beat Washington State, something that Oregon State cannot say. However, Utah beat UCLA, but Utah was not able to beat Oregon State. So we have a couple of head-to-heads there. So at first glance, it seems like this game feels pretty even. It does feel a tad even. So we'll talk about the key matchup, and then we'll talk about some players to watch in this game before I give my prediction here. So, key matchup in this one, and something to really keep in mind, UCLA is ranked number 2 in the country in rush defense. I'm going to say that again, just in case that shocked you guys a little bit. They are number 2 in the entire country in rush defense. They're allowing just 64 yards a game. And they also only allowed 1 rushing touchdown the entire year, which I'm sure when you think of UCLA, you think of Chip Kelly, you don't think defense, right? You just don't. And that's fine. That's perfectly fine. But it's happening here there at UCLA. And they played some good teams too. They played a couple of good teams, particularly in Utah, particularly in Washington State. So it's a proven rush defense, I would say, through 2 weeks of the season. So big test because Damian Martinez, electric running back. Electric running back, has 1,600 yards rushing over the last 2 years. He's averaging 6 yards a carry. That is a team record, by the way. Also had a solid performance against Cal. Not a liquid or a gas, but a solid performance. Ran for 90 yards, ran for a touchdown. Can they get Damian Martinez going? Can they make it honest in terms of keeping it easy on the ground, right? Not necessarily like breaking like home run ball type of runs, but picking up like 4 to 5 yards consistently. If Oregon State can do that, DJU is going to have some more space to operate. So because UCLA can't focus on the passing game, and granted, we think DJU is a solid quarterback. He has thrown for 7 touchdowns and 2 interceptions in the first 3 games of Pac-12 conference action as of right now. So if Damian Martinez and DJU, if they can get at least make it honest with the running game, then that'll give DJU some time to operate, because if Oregon State gets one-dimensional, that could become an issue. Other players to certainly watch out for. We got to talk about this true freshman quarterback, Dante Moore. He's growing right before our eyes in terms of how he's played throughout the season. Dante Moore just last week threw for 290 yards, and that's a career high for him in his young college career. He's matching it matches his career high. So he didn't break it, he matched it. Dante Moore been solid thus far this year. 9 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He hasn't been great. He's been okay though. But he has been able to get explosive plays through the air, even though maybe that completion percentage is not necessarily the previous. He's only completing 53% of his passes, which is not ideal, but he is a dynamic threat, because when he does complete said passes, he's able to get big chunk plays out of it. 16 yards, a completion. That's 3rd best in the entire country. And Oregon State got a pretty good defense in their own right. Aside from that 38-point performance against Washington State, their defense has overall held up extremely well. One of the better coached defensive units in the country. Dante Moore is going to have to step up in this one. And then likewise, going back to the Oregon State side in terms of an X factor, we already talked about DJU. We got to talk about Silas Bolden. He's a wide receiver for Oregon State. He's been a versatile force for the Beavers. In his game against Cal, he caught 3 passes for 34 yards, got a touchdown there too. Also rushed for 11 yards. This is someone that plays a big threat in the return game. And, when games are projected to be pretty close, that special teams does play a really big role at the end of the day. So can Silas Bolden be that X factor and maybe create a touchdown drive through special teams, or through so to speak, create those big plays either through the air or on the ground? Because he's kind of a home run hitter. He's not one to go for singles and doubles, so to speak. So that's really what I'm looking for in this particular game. I'm excited about this game as well. We're going to have a lot of games happening at the same time. Last facts and figures before I go ahead and give my prediction. So this series actually does date back to 1930. So there's that. One last thing is Oregon State has 22 red zone conversions in 22 attempts this season. That's either getting a touchdown or a field goal. So they're extremely successful in getting points in the red zone. UCLA is one of the best in the nation in terms of red zone defense. They're allowing just 4 touchdowns and 3 field goals in the red zone. So we got that out of the way. Let's now talk about who I think is going to win this game at the end of the day. The model has Oregon State winning by 8, and then Vegas has it at a 3.5 points. I truly do think this game really could go in either direction. I do. But because this game is in Corvallis, we're going to pick Oregon State to win. Because a true freshman quarterback going on the road in that environment in Razor Stadium in Corvallis, Oregon, it is a very underrated environment. If you haven't seen an Oregon State game, which I know many of you haven't, I know you haven't done so, this is going to be a rocking environment. I think that's just a little too much for a true freshman quarterback to do. And because of that, we're going to side with Oregon State. Close, though. I think Oregon State wins this game. I can't say for certain if they cover, though. Boy's starting to get a little hurt a little bit. Riding that struggle bus, for sure. This is water, by the way. Just to make that clear. We're not getting drunk on a late afternoon. At least not yet, allegedly. So we covered the big games in terms of this upcoming weekend. We talked Oregon, Washington. We talked USC and Notre Dame. And then we talked Miami and North Carolina and UCLA and Oregon State too. But what we haven't done yet is complete the 4-for-4 special by Wendy's. We talked about 2 of the 4. And right now, I'm going to tell you right now, we're not going to go 4-for-4. So we picked FIU to cover at the 1.5. We locked that in when we recorded on Monday, and we were wrong. We were wrong about UTEP. UTEP used a strong start in the first quarter. They had 21 points in the first quarter. They ended up winning 27-14. UTEP gets their second win in the season. They told me to shove it. I was wrong about Florida International. FIU is going to still look for their first win in conference play, while UTEP does improve to 1-2. The jury will still be out on SMU and Eastern Carolina. We picked the under at 50.5. That's kicking off at 7:30 tonight. You'll probably know what that result is after the fact. This will probably be released on a Friday. So tomorrow when I'm recording this. But speaking of Friday, I got a best bet for Friday. I got a best bet for Saturday. One of which we may have already talked about here on this pod tonight. But we'll start with Friday. Friday night, 10 p.m. Eastern. The line has moved on this a little bit, but we still love it, though. We're going to go with Colorado here at -11.5. Colorado is hosting Stanford. Colorado is seeking their 5th win of the year. And here's one thing that's happening with this Colorado team. First, point blank, I think Stanford, not Arizona State, but Stanford is the worst team in the Pac-12. I just think they are. They don't got that dog in Stanford, so to speak. Likewise, I'm sure Coach Sanders, Coach Prime Time, he's probably not too terribly happy with how his team played against Arizona State. It was a win, but it was an ugly win. So the good news with that is I think Prime is going to have his guys more prepared coming into this game on Friday night at 10 p.m. Eastern. And likewise, they're also going to be at home. This game will be in Boulder, Colorado. And also, Travis Hunter is coming back. He missed the last couple of games. He missed the Oregon game. He missed the USC game. But he's back. We'll see if he plays both sides of the ball. I think there's plenty of offensive weapons for where Travis really doesn't have to do that. I think that he should focus his attention at corner unless there's injuries. At the receiver position, I think he should just play one way personally, even though it's fun to see him play both sides of the ball. But that's a different conversation for another time. That being said, I feel really good about the 11.5 that Colorado has. They'll get that 5 wins, and that's going to continue to help them push them well over their preseason expectations. And then on Saturday, we already talked about this game earlier. We talked about how there was going to be a lot of points in this particular game. Oregon and Washington, we're going with the over here. It's at 67.5. And listen, guys, it's a high number. It's an extraordinarily high number. So if you're scared, I get it. I absolutely get it. However, last time these two got together, Washington won 37-34. A lot of points are going to be in this game. Penix Jr. and Bo Nix are Heisman candidates. They're going to put up some numbers in this game. It's probably going to go down to whoever has the ball last is going to be the team that ends up winning it. So it's a lot. It's definitely a lot. I get it. But we're going to go with Oregon and Washington. We're going over here of 67.5. And it's going to be like a Katy Perry song because we are going to have some fireworks in that ball game. And that, my friends, will conclude the Wendy's 4 for 4 here. Before I get towards the end here, I do want to point out a little bit of disclaimer. Only bet money that you are comfortable with losing, and also make sure you're gambling responsibly. If you do have a problem with gambling, there is resources available for you for those that have a gambling addiction. With that being said, guys, we're going to get ready to sign off here as we get closer to watching some football, both at college and the NFL. Fun-filled weekend. We continue this 49-day exodus where there's either college or NFL games played. Let me know how you feel about the 4 for 4 bets, and also how you feel about the top 25 games that are happening this upcoming weekend. I'm excited for all of those games. We'll plan on at least, if not on the main screen in my house, they'll at least be on a tablet of some sort. Like, we're going to be watching all of these games as best as we can. But we're excited. We are excited about it. And if you guys are excited as I am, I would truly encourage you, hit that like button for me. Would truly appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. It helps get this video, get this podcast out to more college football fans like yourself, and it lets me know that you're enjoying it, which I really would appreciate that too. In addition, you have a real opportunity to be an A1 since day one. And if you made it all the way through this pod, then you probably enjoyed this podcast to where, hey, you should hit that subscribe button anyway. So it's just to help a brother out. Help me out, man. I would truly appreciate that. But guys, we're going to get ready to sign off here. Hope you guys all have an excellent weekend. I'll try to catch you guys back early next week. We'll do a recap of the games that surprised me the most in that week 7 once the dust completely settles. This is your host, Jake, of Any Given Saturday, signing off, but hoping you guys are all out there having a good one. Take care, everybody.